Hello and welcome to Cultural Apologists React for today, September 4th, 2024. This is an AI-generated podcast and can make mistakes. Use it for generating possible ideas, but don't rely on it as an authoritative guide to the day's news or to the details of cultural apologetics. Benny Gantz accuses Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of prioritizing his own survival over hostage lives and peace talks with Hamas. Netanyahu insists Israel must retain control of the Philadelphia corridor along Gaza's border with Egypt, a stance that jeopardizes ceasefire efforts. Tens of thousands of Israelis protest against the government's handling of the war, and Gantz calls for new elections. The Biden administration prepares to propose a take-it-or-leave-it deal after the latest round of talks collapsed. Violence continues in Gaza and the West Bank. So, how might we think about this story from the standpoint of cultural apologetics? The ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine has reached a boiling point, with Benny Gantz accusing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of prioritizing his own survival over hostage lives and peace talks with Hamas. At the heart of this crisis lies a fundamental question: what is the true nature of power and leadership in times of conflict? According to theologian William Cavanaugh, author of Torture and Eucharist, true power is not about domination or control, but rather about the ability to create spaces for dialogue and reconciliation. In his book, Cavanaugh argues that the Eucharist, a central ritual in Christian worship, has the potential to subvert dominant forms of power by creating a space where people can come together across boundaries and divisions. Similarly, in the context of the Israeli Palestinian conflict, we see that Netanyahu's insistence on retaining control of the Philadelphia corridor is not about ensuring security or stability, but rather about maintaining a grip on power that is slowly slipping away. As Cavanaugh notes in Being Consumed, consumerism and nationalism are two sides of the same coin, both driven by a desire for control and domination. Netanyahu's stance on the Philadelphia corridor is a classic example of this dynamic at play. By insisting on retaining control, he is attempting to assert Israel's dominance over Palestine, rather than seeking a more nuanced and inclusive solution. But what about Gantz's call for new elections? Is this simply a case of political opportunism, or is there something deeper at stake? According to theologian Miroslav Volf, author of Exclusion and Embrace, the struggle for justice and peace requires a fundamental transformation of our understanding of identity and community. In the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, this means moving beyond narrow nationalist identities and embracing a more inclusive and expansive sense of belonging. Gantz's call for new elections can be seen as an attempt to create space for this kind of transformation to take place. By challenging Netanyahu's leadership and pushing for a fresh start, he is opening up the possibility for a more nuanced and inclusive approach to conflict resolution. This is not simply about replacing one leader with another, but rather about fundamentally reimagining what it means to be Israeli or Palestinian. The Biden administration's proposal of a take-it-or-leave-it deal also raises interesting questions about the nature of power and leadership in times of conflict. As Cavanaugh notes in Migrations of the Holy, the idea of a neutral, impartial broker is often a myth that masks deeper forms of domination and control. In this case, the Biden administration's proposal may be seen as an attempt to impose a solution from outside, rather than allowing the parties themselves to find a way forward. Ultimately, the story highlights the need for a more nuanced and inclusive approach to conflict resolution. Rather than relying on external brokers or imposing solutions from above, we need to create spaces for dialogue and reconciliation that are grounded in a deep understanding of the complexities and nuances of the conflict. This requires a fundamental transformation of our understanding of power and leadership, one that prioritizes empathy, compassion, and inclusivity over domination and control. As Volf notes in Exclusion and Embrace, this kind of transformation is not easy, but it is essential for creating a more just and peaceful world. By embracing the complexities and nuances of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we may yet find a way forward that honors the dignity and humanity of all parties involved. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Cultural Apologists React. Be sure to come back tomorrow for a new take on the day's news, from the standpoint of Christian cultural apologetics.